If you have questions, like Kara said, put them in the chat. We'd love to answer those as best we can. You want to hop into this, Chris?
Let's do it. Let's get started.
All right. So quick disclaimer to start out. I want to say that real estate is constantly changing, especially in the market that we're in right now. There's always something that's going to be moving, changing. You know, at any moment, the government could make some change and it completely alters what we say today. So just keep that in mind, that real estate is a really fluid place to be for us working and for the consumer. Also, real estate's different everywhere. Obviously, the University of Maryland's Alumni Association has global reach. So some people here may be on the call from California. They may be here, you know, across the world. So our expertise is in Maryland, Virginia, Pennsylvania, that kind of area. So some of the things we say now might not necessarily apply specifically to your real estate market. We do our best to keep things pretty general. But at the end of the day, if you have specific questions about the real estate market in a specific area, state, city, whatever, if it's not a place that we cover, we'd be glad to get you in contact with somebody who does, so you can get the most accurate information for you and for your market. And finally, every situation is unique as well. What works for me when I bought my house might not necessarily be accurate for Chris when he buys his, or for Kara when she buys hers. We treat every situation like it's unique. Every client, I think they're unique because they truly are. So just keep that in mind, that we're going to make some generalizations here along the way. We don't love to do that, but for the conversation we're going to have today, that's kind of necessary to do. So with our disclaimers out of the way, we're going to hop in. So we typically say step one, if we were going to number the steps, is to get a pre-approval letter. Chris, this is kind of your expertise here. So
yeah, so we always start in the beginning with a pre-approval for a couple of reasons. I like to think of it as two-pronged. Can we confirm you qualify for a mortgage? And just as importantly, what are your goals and expectations, right? Hence the qualification and expectation title here. So I always like to take a very basic approach to mortgage finance and really outline the three main features that anybody's going to be evaluated on when obtaining a loan. I call them the 3 C's. So credit, capacity, and capital. And in brief, what does that really mean or entail is, what is your credit score? What is your capacity? Meaning, what can you afford every month? And what do you have saved in terms of capital, whether it be checking or savings, investment accounts, or even first-time home buyer programs that provide down payment assistance. Quite simply, if we can check those 3 boxes, you're able to get a home loan. So we start by really diving into the process and taking a look at your credit report, your earnings, whether it's a W-2 salary position or say you're self-employed, really getting a grip on what cash flow looks like for you. And then saying, okay, you can afford a mortgage payment that is X dollars a month, and that corresponds to an overall purchase price of $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, whatever your goals are. But equally important in this process is making sure that when you set forth to obtain a home loan, you're doing so that's within your own means, right? 9 times out of 10 clients will qualify for more house and more payment than they typically want. So being very pragmatic in, this is what I want to pay every month in a mortgage payment, and this is what I feel comfortable spending at closing, is really important to discuss with your loan officer from the very beginning, right? Because the last thing that any mortgage lender, any real estate agent, anybody involved in this transaction wants is you to feel like you have gotten in over your head in terms of your monthly payment and in terms of cash to close. So really, this is going to be an opportunity to outline your affordability, your goals, and then determine, okay, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Realtor, or hey, Dave, this is what meets the client's goals, right? A purchase price of this with, X, Y, and Z parameters set. And again, keeping it very general, we're going to outline what makes sense for you. And then you can have that conversation with your realtor to say, this is what makes sense for me, right? Based off of, my lender's recommendations.
We good on that slide then?
Yeah.
Awesome. So if we call that one, I'm gonna amend it to say that's step 1A, and this is step 1B, which is sit down for a buyer consultation. And that's where you're gonna sit down with the realtor of your choice and have a conversation about a lot of different aspects of the home buying process. And this is a short list of some of the things you should expect to talk about. And I like to tell people, maybe have some of these things in your mind ahead of time before you actually sit down or get on, or get on Zoom or get on a phone call with the real estate agent that you're intending to use. First off is wants and needs. What are the absolute must-haves for your new home? Do you need a garage because you run a printing business and that's where you're going to house it? Do you need 3 bedrooms because you need one for you and one for each of your kids? Those types of things. And then the flip side of that is the things you absolutely don't want. Do you not want a huge yard because you don't want to have to take care of a yard? Do you not want a townhouse because you want space between yourself and your neighbors? And then that kind of rolls into where and when. Is there a specific place that you're looking that you might need to be for your job? And then when are you looking to move? When would you like to be moved in by? When do you, if you have a lease that you're currently renting, when is that up? Those types of questions are going to come up pretty early on. Expectations. What do you expect from your realtor? There's people work a lot of different ways. Some home buyers want their realtor to send them homes every morning. They want to see the new houses that come to the market. Other home buyers want to do that themselves. They want to be very active in the search and want to be more hands-on. So have that conversation and say, this is what I'm expecting. This is my expectation of you. And this is this is how hands-on I'd like to be in the process. Schools, I have a question mark next to schools because some people don't care about the school system. Some people don't have kids or not planning to have kids or not planning to have kids while they own this particular home. So maybe for them, they're not as, it's not as big of a deal how the school system is there or what school system they're in particular. Experience. And by that, I mean, how much experience do you as a buyer have in the real estate market? If you've never bought a home before, tell your realtor, your real estate agent ahead of time that you've never purchased a home before. Let them know that this is your first time and you really need to be walked through the whole process. Hopefully after today, you'll have a little more knowledge than you did coming in. But, if you're in a different area or if it's a different market at the time, you might want a little more of a walkthrough at that point. Or if you've done this a million times, let your realtor know that too. Say, I've been there, done that. I know all the paperwork, I know all that stuff. Just give me the surface level and let's run with it. And then finally, you should come away from that meeting with a plan for moving forward. Whether it be, okay, cool, I'll talk to you in 6 months and we'll start our search then, or I'll see you on Saturday when we go look at homes. You should be coming away with something tangible where you know what everyone's next step is. I always highly encourage that. I'm a big planner as far as knowing what's my next step, what's your next step. So those are some of the things you should expect when you actually meet for a consultation with a real estate agent. After that, you start your search. And that's the fun part. That's where we get to go shopping with friends. So I've had a lot of people ask me in the past, where do I look for homes? There's Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, HomeSnap. Some of these I'm sure you've heard of, some of them you haven't. If you're looking on Zillow and Trulia, it's actually the same website. I don't know if a lot of people know that. It's the same company. So you're going to see a lot of the same information there. Redfin is different. They run their own brokerage. So they have some different information that Zillow and Trulia may not. HomeSnap is one that I like to recommend to people. It's an app you can download. And I like that because it's actually linked to the MLS, and the MLS is the multiple listing service that realtors use. That's where all the other websites get all their information. But not all websites or services are directly linked. So a directly linked site or service is going to be much more accurate, much more quickly. And then the final one I have on here is real estate agent websites. A lot of real estate agents will create their own websites or have one built for them. And I always like to push people toward those. If you're using a particular realtor, it's probably because you like that person. And I would always say if they're offering you a service, you should at least check it out. 99% of the time, those websites are also linked directly to the MLS. So they're going to be very accurate and very quickly updated. They might not be as beautiful as Zillow, Trulia, Redfin, HomeSnap, but you can usually have direct conversations with your real estate agent that way. Makes the whole communication a lot smoother and a lot easier. And anytime you can streamline communication, it's going to help absolutely every aspect of your home buying experience. So after that, we're going to make a list. Make a list of the homes that you like the most. These are the ones you really want to go see. I say 5 to 10 is an ideal amount to start. And the reason I say that, especially in today's market, that's so competitive, we have so many people looking to buy homes. We have, homes going onto the market and going under contract in 2 or 3 days. If you're scheduling any more than 5 to 10 showings, first off, you're going to get burnt out because everything is going to start looking the same. You'll have the conversation of, oh, I really liked the one with the big window. And, whoever you're with is going to say, which big window? Or the one with the big window in the tree, or the one with the big window and the garage. And it's going to, houses start to overlap pretty quickly in your mind. So 5 to 10 is a good number that you can see in an evening, afternoon, whatever it is, and you won't get too burnt out. But it's also enough that you're being efficient with your time and your real estate agent's time. You'll be able to see a good amount of homes quickly instead of driving an hour to look at one, driving home, let's go see another tomorrow. And if you do everything as efficiently as possible, Santa will be breaking into your house soon. I put that meme there because it was a make a list, check it twice thing. And then I realized that I'd never had really like a great time to say that, but I still liked the meme. So I left it in there. There's more coming. Don't worry. Next up is home tours. And that's kind of what I was talking about. You actually want to go see the homes that you're interested in, like this beautifully photoshopped picture. Photos online of houses can look much different than the home in person. Natural light in a home is fantastic in some cases. But you want to make sure that the home that you love online is actually the home that you love in person. I'm not one to advocate for purchasing a home sight unseen, and except for in some, specific circumstances. But this is really the nitty gritty of the home search process. Yes, you can find a ton of houses you love online. It's a lot easier to disqualify a home by seeing it online than it is to say, yes, this is the home for me. So home tours, actually going out and walking through a house, getting a feel for it, seeing where your furniture is going to go, thinking about that type of stuff is one of the most important parts of the home buying process. So then we're going to move into making an offer. And this is the paperwork part. There's paperwork, there's some more paperwork, there's a deposit check, and then at the end, there's a little bit more paperwork. Typically in Maryland, we see contracts around 45 pages long. Almost everyone's going to have to be initialed, and the last page of each document is going to have a signature. It's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of legalese. I don't know if we have any lawyers in here, but lawyers love to get paid. And they do that by writing long documents. And it's great because it protects you, it protects me, it protects the seller, it protects everybody. That's why it's there. But there, is a lot of paperwork to go through. One of the important things I like to touch on here, and that's why it has its own bullet point that doesn't say paperwork, is the deposit check. This is a part or an aspect of the offer process, the home buying process, that I don't think is talked about enough. When you submit an offer to purchase a home, you include a deposit check along with it. And it's kind of like, it's a deposit to hold the home, and it's a deposit to put a little bit of skin in the game. And that's basically so that you're not throwing out 10 offers on 10 different houses and seeing what sticks. Um, so, and how much the deposit check is a question I get asked a lot as well. That can be very specific case by case. So I can't really answer that 100% because I'm sure somebody's thinking that. Usually not a lot though. I know that's vague. I'm sorry. But that money that you're putting in the deposit is going to go toward the purchase of the home. So it's not just money that flies away. If it's $1,000 deposit check, that's $1,000 that's going toward the purchase of your home. It's not an additional $1,000 you have to come up with, but you do have to have that at the beginning of the purchase process. Chris, did you have something to say there?
I was just going to add that a lot of times first-time homebuyer clients wonder just that, like where's my deposit going, who's holding it, and does that get applied to my closing costs? And the simple answer is yes. For instance, if you put a deposit down for $2,000, you would then owe $2,000 less at settlement when you get to the big day. But it's a really important piece of this puzzle that oftentimes is overlooked until you're ready to write the offer.
And I know a lot of people my age are not as likely to have a checkbook lying around, but it is much more convenient if you do have a check that you can do the deposit in that form. There are other ways to go about it if you don't have checking or you just don't want to. That's fine. We can go about it other ways, but it is super convenient if you happen to have a check with you.
And one quick note, because we do have some questions that came in about it. Wondering if your offer isn't accepted by the seller, what happens to your deposit check?
Yeah, great question. So window into my world, when I send an offer to a listing agent to review with their seller, I'm not sending the actual physical check. All I'm doing is sending a picture of the check to say, or a scan of the check to prove that it is there and it's ready to go. If the offer is not accepted, you can rip that check up, void that check, whatever you'd like to do. It never gets touched by anybody's hands except yours. The only time that check is in my possession or is in anyone else's possession is once we have gone under contract and you are now legally invested in purchasing the home. At that point, the check will be cashed and held in a specific account at my office or your realtor's office, and that'll be held and then applied toward the purchase of the home at the time of closing.
A couple other questions came in while we're here, I think might make a good jumping off point. One that we got a couple on was, how long is the pre-approval good for, and how does that work with the home search? So on the pre-approval side, that's going to be specific to the lender you choose to use for financing. For us specifically, they're typically good for 120 days. And if you get to day 121 and you haven't found that house, then's a great time to check back with your lender to say, hey, I know my pre-approval letter's now expired, and specifically what has expired is the credit report's no longer valid. You can always decide to re-up the pre-approval then, or depending on how the search is going, maybe, you wait a few more weeks or months, to re-authenticate that pre-approval. But, Dave, you can probably shed some light on this. The market right now, some searches are going really quick and others taking a little bit longer.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had clients in the last couple of weeks that looked at 3 houses and were under contract in a day and a half. And I've had others that have been looking for months and haven't found what they're looking for. It's just a product of the market the way it is and looking for certain aspects in a home that either are widely available or aren't. And I will say, I don't like to always speak for every realtor out there, but I will take this time to speak for every realtor out there. Having all of your documentation in and having the pre-approval valid at the time that you're like ready to purchase a home is so unbelievably helpful. It'll make everything smooth. It'll make your offer quicker. It'll make you more likely to be able to get the home you really want if you don't have to wait on somebody else to get you documentation. So Do we have any other questions we want to do now?
I think there's a couple more. The EMD, or the earnest money deposit check, can it be a personal check or a certified check?
Most of the time it's a personal check. That's what probably 90% of my clients would use. You could certainly do a certified check if you like. But like I said before, because it's not going to get cashed until your offer is accepted. If you were to have that certified check made out, and if something were to come up and your offer isn't accepted, and now you're waiting to put in an offer on a new home, you may not want that certified check just laying around. Or if it has to be made out to somebody else, a lot of banks I know charge for certified checks, so you may not want to incur that expense if you don't have to.
And a couple other questions I think we're going to address as we move throughout the rest of the presentation. So
Okay.
we can always circle back to those if we don't touch on them.
Thank you for moderating, Chris. I appreciate it. So now we're in the offer accepted phase. So the EMD check has been cashed at this point. You're under contract on your home. You're excited, but there's still some more work to do. This is where Chris comes.
So once you're under contract, you can now formally apply for a mortgage. So before this, you've been pre-approved, right? Meaning a lender's evaluated your qualifications and said, hey, based on what we're seeing, you're qualified for a mortgage. Well, now this is where the rubber meets the road in a sense, right? We're looking to actually formally get you approved for a loan. So at this point, whether your search has taken a day or a year, right? Chances are we want to reconfirm your information, and we might need to even update some of the documents. Could be maybe a new pay statement has processed since time of pre-approval, or maybe a bank statement needs to be updated because you got a gift from a family member. Whatever the case might be, we're going to look to, or any lender is going to look to reconfirm all of your data and then update those documents. It's also at this time that you can now lock in your interest rate, right? So when you're out searching for a home, you don't have interest rate protection just because you're not under contract to purchase a home yet. Once you have that contract, you can then give yourself the protection to lock in your interest rate and avoid any further market volatility. It's also at this time that if at pre-approval you were discussing a few different options with your lender, maybe you were thinking about putting more or less down on your home purchase, or maybe you were wondering a 30-year or 15-year made more sense. Now's the time when you're actually going to finally make that decision if you haven't already. Once you're locked in with your rate and formally under application, you're going to then move through the loan process. In that process, you are going to have your employment verified. The title work is going to be requested. The appraisal is going to be ordered. And then eventually you get formally approved for that loan, where you can then proceed to settlement, right? And actually use the funds from the mortgage to purchase the home. But all in all, that loan process can be done in as quickly as 20 days. It can be done in 30, 40. The length of your contract will dictate how quickly you move through the loan process. But to reiterate Dave's point earlier, the more education you do in the beginning, right, on which products, what pre-approval makes sense for you, the easier the rest of it goes throughout the process. Because no one likes to cram a whole bunch of, what do I do into a few hours, as opposed to taking your time and learning it over, say, a few weeks before finding your dream home.
Yeah, absolutely. So next up is the fun part, he says sarcastically, the inspections. So this is one of my favorite memes that was shared in a real estate group, because no matter how knowledgeable the people are around you, and it's fantastic to have very knowledgeable people around you, it's really, really important if you're going to have a home inspection to have it done by a licensed, certified home inspector. They are insured, and they have gone through rigorous training to look for the things that are really going to impact you as a homeowner and as a buyer. And they're going to make sure that you are protected and you are as knowledgeable as possible about the home. This is obviously a meme from Tiger King, whose 1-year anniversary on Netflix was the past few days ago. So It's a big part of my quarantine. I don't know about you. So what to expect when you're inspecting? My favorite pun of the day. We're going to look for big issues. So we're going to look for things like mechanical, systems, roof, structural. By mechanical and systems, I mean plumbing, electrical, heating, and air conditioning. We want to look for things that are really going to impact you positively or negatively as a homeowner. We don't want to sweat the small stuff. We don't want to be making requests of the seller that the baseboard in the corner of the bathroom is missing some paint, or there's a doorknob in the one bedroom that doesn't match the others. This process can be a really stressful time for a lot of people, and we really want to make sure we are keeping everything in perspective, that we are looking for the big ticket, big impact items. Once we're done the inspection period, you typically have some time to negotiate with the seller, asking for them to make certain repairs, have repairs done, provide you with a credit of some sort to make up for not having repairs done. And then in most situations, if you're not comfortable with the inspection or the negotiation period, you can typically walk away at that point. There are obviously some asterisks on there. If the paperwork that you've decided to submit is without an inspection period, you won't have the opportunity to do the inspection and walk away at that time. If you're purchasing a home as is, it typically means that you can do an inspection, but you can't do the negotiation period. You're just going in to say, yes, I would like to purchase this home knowing the things I now know, or no, I would not like to purchase this home knowing the things that I know. Chris kind of mentioned the appraisals before. I like to say that appraisals are inspections for the lender. And Chris, you can kind of talk about that a little bit more, why appraisals happen and why they're important.
Sure, yeah. So from our perspective as the lender, your home inspection kind of determines the quality, craftsmanship, things you need to worry about within the home. The appraisal for the lender tells us what the home's worth. So it's using the most recent 3 to 5 sales in a half-mile radius to determine homes of similar square footage, bedroom count, bathroom count are worth this based on what they sold for, and using that data to influence what the proposed home is going to be worth. And it's important for us to make sure that we're not lending money on a home that's worth less than what we think, or worth less than what our loan is. We don't want you to be underwater in that instance. And we actually have a couple of inspection questions here coming in. Who typically pays for the inspection, the buyer or the seller, and what's included in that deposit was a question that came in from Rebecca.
So typically the home inspection is paid for by the buyer. It is your transaction with the home inspector. You are employing them to come do the inspection. And the reason for that is we want the home inspector to be as unbiased as possible. I would never say that, a home inspector would be biased toward a seller, but if they're working for you, they're obliged to do everything for you. So the home inspector is typically, there's always an instance where it's not, but they're typically paid for by the buyer.
And another question coming in to build off that is, how do people typically find an inspector?
Yeah, so I know that I have a list of several that I have worked with over my years in real estate, that a lot of my clients, they don't know a real estate inspector, a home inspector. So they'll ask me for suggestions. You can always do a simple Google search, and, go to Yelp, go to Google, whatever, and find highly rated home inspectors in your area. Most real estate agents are going to have some that they've used before that they feel comfortable recommending. So that would probably be the two main places that people find. Or if you had a friend or family member that recently purchased a home, they most likely had a home inspection. You can ask them who they used.
Mm-hmm. And then we had one here about if there are repairs that need to be done to the house that the seller refuses to repair, can the mortgage cover those costs? or is a different loan involved? And not to go too far down this rabbit hole, because that can get a bit intricate and in depth. There are mortgages out there to help renovate homes and bring them up to date. Say you bought a fixer-upper, and I'm not talking about Chip and Joanna Gaines, but a home that you wanted to, improve. You can absolutely use a mortgage product to do that. It's called a renovation loan. There's a couple different programs out there, but it allows you to finance the purchase of the home plus the renovation work, so you're not coming out of pocket to do an extensive renovation. I would say if it was something in the inspection report that was minor, you might not consider a renovation loan, only because it's a different loan and it gets a little bit more complicated. But there are definitely loans out there to help fix up homes.
And you're probably wondering why there's a Nutella meme on the screen now. I like this one. It says, "Don't move the Nutella, it's holding up the shelf." If a jar of Nutella is holding up a shelf during your home inspection, that's one of those things that I would say is on the try not to sweat it side. If there's a jar of Nutella holding up a wall, or that has become an integral part of the foundation of the home, that's a conversation you really need to have with your home inspector and possibly a contractor at that point. So now we're on to closing. This is the day when you actually get handed the keys to your new home.
So you've done all of the inspections. We've gotten through the loan process. What kind of comes next? Well, 3 business days before closing, every lender by federal regulation is mandated to issue what's called a closing disclosure. And that is basically the final figures for your home purchase. You're going to see what your down payment is, what the closing costs are, and what your payment all finalized at. Now, if you used a trustworthy and notable lender, those numbers hopefully haven't changed much. But this is your chance to make sure that you're confirming all the details at least 3 business days before closing. You'll also take that time to initiate the wire for closing. So oftentimes, there's a down payment and closing costs to purchasing a home, but how do you actually get that money, to the settlement table? You can't just show up with a suitcase full of cash. What most title companies have you do these days is they have you set up a wire beforehand where you can wire the funds directly from your bank account to the title company. That way, when you walk into settlement, all you have to do is worry about signing the documents. And then lastly, you want to make sure you bring your ID. You want to make sure you've confirmed your homeowner's insurance policy is effective, and then just be ready to sign, and sign again.
And also I would add to that to make sure that any utilities on the home have been transferred over. That's typically something I advise people to do a few days ahead of time, just to let the utility company know that you're closing on your new home on a specific day, and that the account should be moved into your name so that you don't lose your electricity or anything like that. And then, congratulations, you are a homeowner. That's pretty much it for our presentation. I'm sure there's a few more questions.
Yeah.
I want to throw out there real quick. If you have any more questions about really specific situations, give us a call, reach out to us on social media. We have a bunch of other ways to bring you some information. We have some buyer guides, some seller guides that we'd be glad to send to you that are super easy to read through and understand, and they're much more updated than the summer 2019 edition that you see on the screen. And we have our info that we can share at the end.
So a couple questions that came in, which are really good ones. And I know we've got a little bit of time to get to them. So one is, how common is it to waive an inspection? I've been hearing that because the market's so competitive, you need to make your offer as attractive as possible to the seller.
Yeah, that's a great question, especially right now. So I've always been a proponent of doing inspections, having a home inspection done. Recently in the market, as you stated in the question, it's very competitive right now in a lot of areas. And we are seeing more and more home buyers waive their inspection rights or do what's called a pre-inspection. And what that would be is when you go to do your showing, you actually have an inspector come with you, or a contractor or somebody knowledgeable to come look at the house ahead of time. Now, we do like to get permission from the seller to do that because it typically takes a little more time than just a regular showing. So talk to your real estate agent about that before you schedule an inspector or a contractor to come out. Um, but we are seeing more and more buyers waive their right to home inspections. It just comes down to a comfort level. If you feel that you are comfortable in making the decision to purchase a home, a specific home, without having an inspection done, and you're okay with doing that, then that's a decision that you need to make personally. Obviously, you'll get a better vibe when you're in a specific house. You'll know kind of going in, well, maybe this one I am comfortable with not having an inspection on, or you'll get the vibe of, I really, if this is a house I were going to move forward with, I would really want to have an inspection. Um, so like we said earlier, everybody is unique. Every situation is unique. And it kind of comes down to um, the specifics of what you have going on at the time, whether or not you want to do that.
Right. Another question that just came in: could you address down payments? Is it still common to put a full 20% down? So I think a lot of home buyers these days have, been educated in various ways, right? Whether it's through the internet or through parents, grandparents, other family members. And most people still to this day think that 20% is the minimum required down payment to purchase a home, which in fact couldn't actually be further from the case. As a first-time home buyer, you have options to put as little as 3% or 3.5% down. If you happen to serve in the military, there's a zero down option for you. And then there's other first-time homebuyer programs out there. They each have their own qualification and requirements, but that would be another way to alleviate, your out-of-pocket expense. But, to debunk that myth, there is not a requirement to put 20% down. There's some reasons why you might consider it, to avoid mortgage insurance being one of them, but, use your loan officer, use your realtor to really discuss why you may or may not want to, because it's not required and there's some really good solutions around it.
Yeah, just to piggyback off that as well. A statistic from NAR, which is the National Association of Realtors, first-time homebuyers in the U.S. on average put between 5% and 6% down on their first home. So,
another question is who pays or who is responsible for paying the realtor?
For paying the realtor, awesome question as well. So, for the most part, in the state of Maryland, the seller is actually who's paying the buyer's agent. A lot of buyer's agents will have administration fees that cover if they have maybe a secretary or somebody working in the office, or if they have some type of documentation fees that need to be covered. So every realtor is different in what they charge, but the actual commission that a buyer's agent is being paid is almost always paid by the seller. Again, I put a little asterisk because there's always a situation that can come up where that's not the case. But for the most part, a buyer will not be compensating their agent for more than their administration fee.
All right, and then I think this is a good question here. There was a couple more that have come in, but what are, and I'm going to mold this to serve both of us, what are the qualities of a good realtor or lender when you're buying a home? What are some things to look out for that might mean they aren't great either?
Well, to speak to a real estate agents and what to look for, I always say that it's important that they have local knowledge. If you are looking in Frederick, Maryland, look for a realtor that has knowledge and has done business in Frederick, Maryland before. Look for someone who you really get along well with, somebody who you gel with, someone who has a similar communication style to you. Because like I said earlier, communication is so important in this entire process. And if you're the type of person that likes to speak on the phone, you don't like to do email or text, but the real estate agent you're working with only texts you, that might not be the best fit. So those are really important. I think education is important. Find somebody who is continually educating themselves so that they can better educate you as well. I'm sure, Chris, you'll agree all those things probably also apply to a mortgage expert.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the one big thing is this is such a monumental purchase, right? And you can really only navigate it confidently with information. So, whether it's a particular home, or, from the mortgage side, our goal is not to sell a product. It's to sell an array of solutions and then allow you individually to choose that solution. So you want to find someone who's going to give you those options, going to give you the education you need to make an informed decision. And I think that's key with any major purchase, obviously, in the context of real estate here. Let's see. I think we might have time for one more. Let's see. If you're unsure if you're going to stay in the house long term, is that something to bring up in your conversation with the lender and realtor? I think that's a really good question because timeline's important, right?
Sure. Yeah, I would say that's definitely important to bring up with your real estate agent, because at the end of the day, what we're here for is to help you achieve your goals. And if your goal is to be in a house for 2 years and then sell and move on, we're going to look for certain things that are different than if you want to be in the home for 20 years. I've been having this conversation actually a lot recently with the market being so competitive. People are asking me if it's okay to offer more than asking price and how I feel about that. And I always say, if you're going to be in the house for a year, I would think really long and hard about offering a lot more than asking price. If you're going to be in the house for 20 years, if that's your plan, then you're going to have 20 years of equity and appreciation in that home that by the time you're ready to sell, that difference in price won't really mean that much to you. So, you need to be upfront with the people you're working with, because they're there to advise you, and they can't properly advise you if they don't have the full picture of what your goals are.
All right. Well, I think that brings us to 2:45. It sounds like this was really kind of an engaging conversation for everyone. I know it was interesting for me. You guys kind of broke it down in a manner that I can understand as a non-homeowner. But I appreciate Chris being the moderator because you definitely know the lingo. So the cool part is that we kind of have like a part 2 scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. So we'll be back here answering similar questions. So we might take some of these and apply them to that conversation. Everyone here can join that one as well. If you didn't get your question answered, I will include all of their information in the follow-up email. And then we did a recording just in case you need to go back and take more notes. So I really appreciate everything, David and Chris. Any last words from you guys for now?
Just thank you again for having us on. We really appreciate it. And we hope everybody here can come on Thursday and find out real estate myths busted.
That's right. And I'll include that in the follow-up email as well. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
All right. And go Terps.
Take care, guys.
Yes, go Terps.
Bye.